What if your decisions are not really yours? What if the sense of control you feel is only a story told after the fact? By the end of this video, you will know why scientists question free will and what role, if any, is left for the conscious self. Picture the moment you decide to lift your finger. You imagine the choice begins inside your mind, a spark of will, a deliberate command. But science tells a stranger story. Hundreds of milliseconds before awareness, the gears have already turned. Your brain starts the movement before you think, now I will act. This is not speculation. It is what the neurophysiologist Benjamin Libet discovered in the 1980s. His experiments shook science, philosophy, and religion alike, because if you do not begin your own actions, do you truly own them? Here's how this study worked. Volunteers sat before a clock. They were told, flex your wrist or finger whenever you feel the urge. No planning, no schedule. Just move when the impulse comes. At the same time, electrodes measured their brain's electrical activity. After each movement, participants reported the exact moment they became aware of their decision, the instant they thought, now. The results were unsettling. Long before the conscious now, about 350 milliseconds earlier, a signal appeared in the brain. This was called the readiness potential. The brain had already begun. The action was set in motion before the mind claimed it. Consciousness comes late. Think of the metaphor Libet himself used. Imagine a pianist pressing a key. The note sounds. Only then does the audience clap. The music is not caused by the applause. The applause only follows. Conscious will, Libet suggested, is like the clapping, not the music itself. This discovery tore open a debate that still rages today. We assume we are the initiators, the captains of our fate, the agents of our choices. But Libet's data suggested something else. Consciousness is not the first cause. It arrives after the fact. Consciousness comes late. So what does that make of responsibility, of morality, of the self? If you don't start your actions, are you truly free? Libet did not dismiss the human spirit. He knew the implications were heavy, but he could not ignore the evidence. Consciousness seemed to narrate what had already begun. Think about the implications. The conscious self is like a witness arriving after the crime has already started. We believe we gave the order. In reality, the order was written beneath awareness and silence. And yet, Libet wondered if consciousness does not initiate. Perhaps it still has a role. Perhaps freedom lies not in what we begin, but in what we can interrupt. So maybe the story of free will is not about starting choices at all, but about stopping them. And that small difference could change everything. So what happens if consciousness comes late? Does it mean we are powerless passengers carried by a machine we cannot control? Does it mean free will is nothing more than an illusion? Many read Libet's data and reach that conclusion. If the brain starts first, they said, then free will is dead. Every action, neurons firing in silence, long before the self appears. But Libet resisted this bleak view. He proposed something different. Maybe we do not initiate every act, but perhaps we can still veto an act before it completes. He called this power free won't. Consciousness may not start the act, but it can still stop it. By the end of this section, you will see why stopping may be the deepest act of freedom. Think of it this way, the brain sends an impulse. The readiness potential rises. You feel the urge to act, but in that short window, you can decide, let it continue, or stop it. Imagine wanting to speak a cruel word. Your brain has already started the machinery. The lips prepare to move, but then a pause, a hesitation, a choice not to say it. The impulse began without you. But the stopping, that was you. Consciousness comes late, but not too late. Libet compared this to politics. A law may be proposed and written, but before it becomes real, a higher authority can veto it. The brain proposes. Consciousness disposes. Freedom is not always starting. Sometimes it is the power to say no. Let's try this now. Close your eyes if you can. Take one slow breath. Inhale, hold, exhale. Notice the tiny impulses in your body. The urge to move your hand. The itch to shift your posture. The impulse to grab your phone. These micro movements arise on their own. You did not create them. But you can notice them. You can let them happen, or you can stop. This gap between impulse and veto is where conscience lives. But maybe you fear, if I stop resisting, won't I lose my edge? Won't I fade into passivity? Won't I drift through life doing nothing? This is the fear. That letting go of control means losing yourself. But Libet's free won't shows the opposite. It is not about surrendering power. It is about discovering where real power lives. Not at the start of every thought, but in the moment you decide whether to follow it. Consciousness comes late. But within that lateness lies a gate. Through that gate, true freedom begins. Look at modern life. Every notification, every scroll, every alert. The average person touches their phone over 2,000 times a day. Impulse after impulse. Unchecked, not chosen, yet obeyed. And we call it normal, we call it progress, but deep down we feel the cost. The restless narrator inside us never stops. And we rarely pause long enough to ask, do I want this, or am I simply obeying? So far we've seen that consciousness may not initiate, but it can intervene, it can say no. Consciousness comes late. But sometimes that lateness is enough to change everything. But the story does not end here. What happens when life brings heartbreak, injustice, or loss, if conscience is only a gatekeeper? Can it carry the weight of morality itself? That is where the real question begins. So far we have seen this. The brain begins and consciousness follows. The impulse rises in silence long before the self speaks. Consciousness comes late. But here is the deeper question. If conscience is only a gatekeeper, can it carry the weight of life's hardest tests? Think of heartbreak. The silence after the person you love is gone. Think of betrayal. The wound left when trust is broken. Think of injustice. The sight of cruelty that tears a community apart. What about losing a child? What about betrayal from the one you trusted most? What about injustice that crushes hope and rips families apart? If impulses fire before awareness, are these also born before us? If so, what role is left for conscience at all? Libet's answer was quiet but profound. Conscience may not start the fire, but it decides whether to spread it. The impulse to despair, the impulse to lash out, the impulse to give up. Each spark rises in the dark and consciousness holds the power. To let it burn or let it die, we are not the spark, we are the gatekeeper. We choose which fires to tend, which to extinguish. Look at our culture, we are drowning in impulses. Every notification, every scroll, every alert. The average person touches their phone more than 2,000 times a day. Each tap, another impulse. Each scroll, another spark. Almost none resisted. And we call it normal. We call it progress, but deep down we feel the cost. The restless narrator never stops. A machine of impulses we obey without pause. Yet even here, conscience whispers. It cannot stop the wave from rising, but it can choose whether we ride it or let it crash. This is the deeper meaning of Libet's discovery. We are not the spark that ignites every act. We are the flame keeper. We are the gatekeeper, and this is freedom, not commanding the universe, not controlling every neuron, every thought, but choosing which impulses define us and which impulses we refuse. You are the gatekeeper. At the start of this journey, I asked, who is really in control? Now you know, not the spark, not the restless voice. You are the gatekeeper. And in that role lies a freedom no empire can give, no loss can take away. So pause, breathe, and if this touched you, write in the comments, I am the gatekeeper. Let that be your reminder. And let it be your practice.